Greetings and welcome, or welcome back as the case may be. Today I'm going to start reading a story of mine called The Old Ways. You'll probably find a recognizable theme running through it. That said, let's get started. Ganita noticed the approaching men, but kept her attention on the work of her apprentice. Her quick glance had shown her that the horses they led were not the standard drays or plow horses that people usually brought her. These were war horses, the horses of nobles. It meant that they were here for reasons other than plows, or likely even shoeing. As they drew closer, her eyes left what her apprentice was doing, and her pumping the bellows lost its smooth rhythm. "Mind the fire," she said, and moved to the front of the forge. She wiped her sweaty brow with a thick muscled arm and pushed strands of her red hair out of her eyes. The men hadn't mounted their horses to launch a charge, so that was good. Ganita took note of their weapons and grabbed her heaviest hammer before she stepped out under the eaves of her porch. Her forge was built near a lake, and the breeze blowing across it felt good. She closed her eyes to enjoy that breeze. When she opened them, she again wiped her brow before studying the tabards the men wore. She didn't recognize the coat of arms, a gold dragon on a white background. She did recognize the iconography of the new god, red on white, on the other tabards, and eyed their weapons again. The men came to a halt a few yards from her porch. Their leader tossed his reins to one of the other men, and he walked ahead. "Are you Ganita the smith, Ganita, the lady of the lake?" Ganita studied him a moment longer before she nodded. "I'm Ganita. You must have spoken to the local villagers to know that last, though." The man smiled thinly. "Actually, your fame has spread some distance. I understand you still follow the old ways, that you know the spells sung into metal." The hairs on the back of Ganita's neck stood up. The old ways were dying hard, and they were dying at the hands of men such as these. Still, the fact that she was a smith gave him the answer, so she nodded. "I'm Ganita the smith, yes, and I know the old ways." She gave a rough bark of laughter. "But singing spells into metal? That's for children's stories." If the men were here to put to the sword those they deemed devil worshippers, maybe they would be dissuaded. "In that case, I have a commission for you." A sharp gesture to one of the men began untying a large sack from the back of his horse. His man brought the bag forward. His eyes augured into Ganita the whole time. Once beside his lord, he stooped, set the bag down, and opened the mouth of the sack, shimmying the sack down until a large, uneven, rounded lump with a patina of soot black was revealed. Ganita gaped. "Ah, so you recognize metal from the heavens." Ganita's lips pursed. Her eyes lingered on the lump of blackened metal. Gathering her thoughts, she directed her attention back to this lord. "I've heard of such, but I've only seen a small clump, the size of a fist. This is many times that size." "Is it enough to make a sword?" The man's face was blank, and his gaze never left Ganita. She studied the lump of metal and finally nodded. "There's enough and more." As soon as she said it, she bit her tongue and tightened her grip on her hammer. The lord's man noticed, and his hand went to his sword's hilt. It was bad enough that she was a woman and a smith. She'd just revealed she knew how to make swords, something a woman had no business knowing. "Excellent. Then I wish you to take this metal and forge a sword the likes of which the world has never seen." He gestured sharply again, and the other man came forward bearing two small sacks, one the size of a fist and one the size of a heavy purse. "It should be inlaid with gold and a ruby pommel stone, all of which I am supplying. What more would you require?" Ganita thought a moment. "The sacks your men carry show you have the gold and gemstones. I will also need some tanned leather for the scabbard." There was no use pretending she didn't know what she was doing. I know a man in the village that makes good leather, so that's no issue. Her eyes met the Lord's. Will that be acceptable, my lord? The nobleman gave a sharp nod. That will be more than acceptable. How long will it take you to make the weapon? Again, Ganita's lips pursed, and a callous finger came up to tap against them. Her eyes glazed as she stared off into the distance. Her focus came back when one of the Lord's men spoke in a low growl. My lord, this is holy metal, fallen from heaven itself. We should not be turning it over to this heathen. She sullies it with her presence. The man stared at Ganita with eyes as hard as her best steel. Ganita's eyes bored into the man as she addressed the Lord's question. It will take me 3 months to assemble the materials and forge the sword for you. I will have to speak to my man about how long the scabbard would take, but I'm guessing about the same time frame. The Lord's first words were addressed to his man. This is settled. I want a sword the likes of which has never been seen. This will be done my way. Do you understand, Edwin? He didn't wait for an answer. He turned to Ganita and said, 3 months then. You understand I want a sword made using the old ways. I understand, my lord. It will be done as you say, and it will be a sword like no other. She nodded and grunted at the last. You have my word on it, my lord. Edwin grunted as well. Your word? The word of a heathen? Ganita didn't reply. What point in denying the assertion at this point? She was what she was, and they were what they were, and this would play out to its end. Now she was thinking through the challenge. She hadn't sung the old songs since she was a small girl, learning her craft. She prayed that she could remember them. She prayed that Lady Bride would hear her and be pleased with what she made. Ganita would certainly aim to make it as good a tribute to the goddess as her hands and mind would allow. It would be more than this lord bargained for. Of that she was certain. The lord nodded, then turned to make his way back to his horse, gesturing to his men to follow. The second set down the two sacks he carried, giving Ganita a look as hard as Edwin's. But he did as instructed and followed his lord. Edwin gave her a last evil eye, then did the same. Ganita tried to ignore the looks, but couldn't help a shiver. The men reached their horses and swung themselves up into their saddles. Ganita stepped forward and said, Pardon, my lord, I should know this, and I apologize. But who shall I say has requested this sword? The nobleman stared at her for a moment, then gave her one of his tight smiles. I am Uther Pendragon. He wheeled his horse and rode away, his men in tow. Okay, so that one went a little longer than I anticipated, but I wanted to get to that as the stopping point, so I drove ahead. In the end, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed listening. If you did, give us a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. And for now, goodbye. We'll see you next time for another piece of this story. Thank you very much.